Hello everyone and welcome to Module 5 of the PSW NACC Certification Exam. We'll be going through the practice questions and answers that you can use to prepare for this exam. Question 1. You notice that a patient's family member is misusing the patient's money. You know that this may be A. Neglect, B. Financial abuse, C. Emotional abuse, D. Financial neglect. Neglect involves failing to provide necessary care, and this does not apply to misusing someone's money. Financial abuse is the theft or misuse of a person's funds or property, and this usually occurs when someone in a position of trust, like a family member, takes advantage of the patient's resources for their own gain. Emotional abuse refers to actions that causes emotional pain, such as insults or threats, but it does not relate to financial misuse. Financial neglect will mean failing to manage the patient's resources, and this is different from actively misusing the funds. For our answer here is option B, financial abuse. Noticing that a family member is misusing the patient's money is a clear indication of financial abuse. Question 2. Which of the following is an example of neglect? A. A client being slapped by a caregiver. B. A client being verbally humiliated by a family member. C. A client not being given medication or assistance with basic needs, such as feeding. D. A client being locked in a room without food or water. Option A is an example of physical abuse and not neglect, where a client is being assaulted by a caregiver. In option B, this is an example of emotional or psychological abuse, but not neglect. Neglect involves the failure to provide essential care or support to someone who is dependent on others for their basic needs. In option D, this is an extreme form of neglect, but it can also be considered abuse due to the intentional harm involved. So, an example of neglect given the options we have here is option C. In this case, not providing medication or assistance with feeding is a clear example of neglect. Question 3. When abuse is suspected, you should first A. Let abuse resolve on its own. B. Report immediately to your supervisor. C. Confront the abuser. D. Call police. Ignoring or allowing abuse to resolve on its own can escalate the situation and may even harm the victim, so it is important to address abuse quickly. In option B, when abuse is suspected, the first step as a PSW is to report it to your supervisor or the appropriate authority within your organization. This will ensure that the matter is handled according to company policies and that the proper investigations and procedures are followed. In option C, confronting the abuser directly could escalate the situation and potentially put you at risk. So it is more appropriate to follow the established procedures by reporting the issue to a supervisor. In most cases, contacting the police should be a last resort or follow after internal reporting procedures if the situation involves legal actions or immediate danger. So the first thing to do is option B, reporting to your supervisor. Question 4. Which is the first phase of the cycle of abuse? A. Abusive phase. B. Honeymoon phase. C. Tension building phase. D. Irritation phase. Abuse phase is usually the second phase in the cycle because the actual abuse occurs here. In option B, the honeymoon phase is the third phase where the abuser may apologize or show kindness and the victim may hope that the abuse will end. This phase provides temporary relief before the cycle repeats itself. The cycle of abuse typically begins with the tension-building phase where stress and anxiety and conflict begin to build up between the abuser and the victim. During this phase, the abuser may become increasingly irritable, demanding, or controlling, and the victim may try to appease the abuser to avoid escalation. Option D, irritation phase is not a recognized phase in the cycle of abuse. So our answer here is option C. The tension building phase escalates until it eventually erupts into the abusive phase, which is the second phase. So we generally have the tension building phase, the first phase, the abusive phase, which is the second phase, and the honeymoon phase, which is the third phase. Question 5. Men are not abused as often as women. True or false? Our answer here is false. While statistics show that women tend to report higher rates of abuse, men can also be victims of abuse, including physical, emotional, and sexual abuse. Abuse can happen to anyone regardless of gender, and men are often underreported victims due to social stigmas and stereotypes about masculinity and victimhood. Efforts to address abuse should be inclusive of all genders, as abuse is not limited by gender. So, in essence, men can also experience abuse, although they may face unique barriers in seeking help or recognition for their experiences. Question 6. Unusual or inappropriate activity in bank accounts, including signatures that do not resemble the account owner's signature, indicates concern of A. Physical abuse, B. Psychological abuse, C. Sexual abuse, D. Financial abuse. Physical abuse involves bodily harm or injury, and while it can sometimes affect a victim's finances indirectly, it is not identified through bank account activities. Psychological abuse refers to emotional harm and manipulation, and it does not directly involve financial transactions or signatures. Sexual abuse involves unwanted or coerced sexual activity and does not relate to unusual financial activity in bank accounts. Financial abuse, on the other hand, involves unauthorized use of someone's financial resources. With respect to the question we have, our answer is option D, financial abuse. This may involve coercion, manipulation, or unauthorized transactions that are conducted by someone else, typically someone in a position of trust, to exploit the victim financially. Question 7. Which of the following are not at risk of being abused? A. Youth who are unsupervised. B. Children. C. People with cognitive impairments. D. People without addictions. Unsupervised youth, especially in high-risk environments, are more vulnerable to various forms of abuse, including physical, sexual, and emotional abuse. Children are also vulnerable to abuse due to their dependence on caregivers for protection, guidance, and basic needs. Individuals with cognitive impairments may have difficulty recognizing, understanding, or escaping abusive situations, making them more susceptible to different forms of abuse. In option D, while people without addictions can certainly experience various forms of abuse, the presence or absence of an addiction is not a direct determinant of whether a person is at risk of being abused. However, individuals who are vulnerable in other ways are at a higher risk of abuse. So, given the options we have, the group of people that are not at risk of being abused is option D, people without addictions. Question 8. Decisions that are concerned with right and wrong are called A. Amoral, B. Legal, C. Ethical, D. religious. Option A refers to a lack of concern for morality, where decisions are not guided by considerations of right or wrong. Legal decisions are based on laws and regulations, which may or may not align with ethical principles. Legal decisions are about what is permissible or required by law, but not necessarily what is morally right. Ethical decisions are concerned with determining what is right and wrong, good and bad, in terms of human behavior, principles, and values. Religious decisions are based on the principles and teachings of a specific religion, which may provide guidance on moral questions, but they are distinct from general ethical principles. Our answer here is option C. Ethics is the branch of philosophy that deals with moral principles and the rules of conduct that guides decision making. Question 9. A person authorized to give or withhold consent on an incapable person's behalf is called A. Assaulter, B. Consenter, C. Executor, D. Substitute decision maker. In option A, an assaulter is someone who commits an act of assault, and this is unrelated to making decisions on behalf of another person. A consenter is someone who gives consent, but the term does not refer to a person who acts on behalf of an incapable person. An executor is a person appointed to carry out the terms of a will and manage the estate of a deceased person. This is different from making decisions for an incapable person. A substitute decision maker is a person that has been authorized to make decisions on behalf of someone who is incapable of making decisions for themselves due to age, illness, or cognitive impairment. So we'll be going with option D, substitute decision maker. This person can give or withhold consent on an incapable person's behalf, ensuring that decisions align with the best interests of the individual. Question 10. Holistic health care recognizes A. All items outlined in the care plan. B. The social, physical, psychological, and spiritual person. C. Cultural and religious backgrounds. D. Physical and safety needs. For this, we'll be going with option B. Holistic healthcare focuses on the whole person, considering not only physical health, but also emotional, mental, social, and spiritual aspects of well-being. It emphasizes treating the person as a whole rather than focusing only on specific symptoms or illnesses. Question 11. If you feel threatened in a client's home, you should leave and call your supervisor. True or false? The answer here is true. If you feel threatened in a client's home, your safety is the priority. So in situations like that, it is important to remove yourself from potentially dangerous environments and leave the premises immediately. After ensuring your safety, you should contact your supervisor and inform them about the situation. They will then provide guidance on the next steps, which could include reporting the incident to the appropriate authorities and ensuring that you receive support. Question 12. In spousal abuse, the abuser is which of the following? A. Partner, B. Family member, C. Neighbor, D. Caregiver. In the context of spousal abuse, the abuser is typically the partner, which could be a husband or a wife or a significant other in an intimate relationship. Spousal abuse, also known as domestic violence, can include physical, emotional, sexual, or psychological abuse inflicted by one partner on another. In options B, C, and D, the family members can be perpetrators of abuse, but spousal abuse specifically refers to abuse between partners and not family members. The same thing applies to options C and D. The neighbor is not a partner. The caregiver is also not a partner. So with respect to the question that we have, our answer is option A, the partner. Question 13. The PSW is bound by law to report all incidences of and suspicion with regards to child abuse, true or false? The answer here is true. In most jurisdictions, personal support workers, along with other professionals who work with vulnerable individuals, are legally obligated to report any suspicion or knowledge of child abuse to the appropriate authorities. This decision is mandated by child protection laws, which requires individuals in positions of care or trust to act if they suspect that a child is being abused, whether the abuse is physical, emotional, sexual, or neglectful. Failure to report can result in legal consequences for the professional. Question 14. Which is the correct term for mental or physical harm done to another person? A. Ageism. B. Defamation. C. Abuse. D. Assault. Ageism is discrimination or prejudice based on a person's age. However, no harm is inflicted on the person. Defamation involves making false statements that damages a person's reputation, but it has nothing to do with physical harm directly. Abuse refers to mental, physical, emotional, or sexual harm inflicted on another person, while assault specifically refers to physical harm or the threat of harm, but it is not a general term for all types of harm. With respect to the question that we have, our answer is option C, abuse. This can involve any action or behavior that causes harm, distress, or suffering to someone else. Question 15. If your client is abusive towards you, you should stay calm, stand up, don't touch the client. All incidences of abuse must be reported and documented, true or false. We'll begin with true here. If a client is abusive towards you, it is crucial to remain calm, avoid physical contact, and maintain a safe distance. Staying calm helps to de-escalate the situation and ensures that you don't provoke further aggression. Standing up can help establish authority and prevent the client from perceiving you as submissive. Not touching the client is important as well to avoid escalating the situation and to protect yourself from potential harm. Additionally, all incidents of abuse must be reported and documented. This will help to ensure that appropriate steps are taken to protect both the client and the caregiver, and it also provides a record in case further action or intervention is required. Reporting abuse also ensures that the incident is reviewed by the proper authorities and that the necessary support is provided to the client or staff member involved. Question 16. Kelly Clark's photo is made public without her consent. This is called A. Assault. B. Invasion of privacy. C. Neglect. D. Battery. Assault is an intentional act that causes the victim to fear imminent bodily harm, but it doesn't involve the release of personal information or images. Invasion of privacy refers to the act of publicly disclosing someone's personal information, images, or actions without their consent. Neglect is the failure to provide necessary care, assistance, or attention to someone, especially in situations where that care is legally required. Battery refers to physical contact or harm that is intentional and unwanted, such as striking or hitting someone, but it is not related to privacy violations. With respect to the scenario we have here, the answer is option B. In this case, Kelly Clark's photo being made public without her consent is a clear example of invasion of privacy. Question 17. Emotional and sexual abuse are the most common types of elder abuse, true or false? We'll be going with true here. Emotional and sexual abuse are indeed among the common types of elder abuse, although physical abuse and financial abuse also occur frequently. Emotional abuse can include verbal assaults, threats, humiliation, and other behaviors that causes psychological harm to the elderly person. Sexual abuse involves any non-consensual sexual contact or activity with an elderly person. Elder abuse often goes underreported, especially emotional and sexual abuse, due to factors like the dependency on the abuser, fear or cognitive impairments in the elderly. It is important to recognize and address all forms of elder abuse in order to ensure the well-being of vulnerable individuals. Question 18. If a PSW is involved in an abusive encounter, they must complete an incident report, true or false? The answer here is true. If a personal support worker is involved in an abusive encounter, they are required to complete an incident report because this will ensure that the incident is properly documented and can be reviewed by the appropriate authorities or management. These reports will also help to protect both the PSW and the client, ensuring that the situation is recorded and addressed properly. Question 19. Which of the following is considered a sign of physical abuse? A. Withdrawal from social activities. B. Unexplained bruises, burns, or fractures. C. Anxiety and fearfulness. D. Unusual financial transactions. Option A can be a sign of emotional or psychological abuse, but it does not really apply to physical abuse. Physical abuse involves the use of force that can cause bodily harm or injury to another person. So, unexplained bruises, burns, or fractures are clear signs of potential physical abuse, especially if the person is unable or unwilling to explain how the injuries occurred. Anxiety and fearfulness are indicative of emotional or psychological abuse or even a response to trauma, while unusual financial transactions would suggest financial abuse but not physical abuse. So our answer here is option B. Question 20. Neglect is defined as A. Pushing, shaking, or hitting a person. B. Inappropriate use of financial resources. C. Failure to provide basic necessities of life. D. Treating the person like a child. We'll be going with option C here. Neglect is the failure to provide necessary care, support, or attention to a dependent person, like an elderly individual, child, or someone with a disability. This can include failure to meet the physical needs like food, shelter, and medical care, emotional needs, or even personal safety needs. This brings us to the end of the video for the PSW NACC certification exam. Don't forget to like, comment, and share, and also hit the subscribe button so that you'll be informed when our next video will be dropping. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.